Yeah.
We are live. Hi there, Derek and Ashley.
Yes.
So, yeah, we wanted to talk about what happens when you decide you want to become an intuitive eater, because it is quite a challenge to all of a sudden just go from being on all kinds of diets or being in recovery from disordered eating and just starting. It's like, okay, I'm letting go of diets. Like, now what? And yeah, Ashley's nodding her head because I've seen so many people who just go from restricting and all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm just going to eat anything I want and everything I want. And I think that can actually be really scary for some people. So I think that some semblance of structure is very helpful when you first get started. And that structure can be not necessarily a meal plan, quote unquote. I know that that gets very, disordered, but some structure, meaning really try to eat meals at regular intervals, experimenting with things that you think you might like. For example, maybe if you're not used to eating breakfast in the morning and you find yourself getting very hungry, starting your day with a breakfast, that could be something that you just start. So Ashley, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, when you first transition to intuitive eating, especially if you're coming from like a chronic dieting place, that's a place ruled by rules, right?
Yeah.
Not to be redundant, but
It is. No, can we say that's a quote? Diets are ruled by rules.
diets are ruled by rules, right? So, it doesn't, you can't go from something so structured, right, that you're so used to doing for 20, 30, 40 years to then, okay, go eat whatever you want, right? Like that's just not going to work.
It's, it's
So
it's overwhelming, and I think people often find themselves really getting freaked out and binging. So
and because dieting, like obviously dieting isn't the answer, that's not what you want to be doing, but in some ways dieting is safe, right? Because it gives you these guidelines, it tells you how to eat, and even though at the end of the day it's not sustainable, it does feel comfortable. And so when you enter intuitive eating, you need something, you need some help, and that's why a lot of dietitians like yourself will suggest set a timer every 2 to 3 hours, you need to check in. You need to see how you're feeling. Are you feeling stomach hunger? Are you feeling head hunger, right? Because there are different ways to feel your hunger.
that's a big one. Am I hungry? Am I hungry?
Yeah. And sometimes, maybe you're not hungry, but you know that an hour from now, you won't be able to go anywhere. You won't be able to get anything. So, maybe you need to eat, even if you're not hungry, right? Intuitive eating allots for that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, the getting started is, and it's a lot of like just being curious with yourself, like just exploring the things that you weren't allowed to explore with dieting, right? Like it's supposed to be fun and exciting, but also it can be scary.
Absolutely. You know what? Dana, what if you can't identify your hunger or fullness? That is a really great question, and I'm going to make a point about that. It's really okay. Often, when someone is coming from a background of any disordered eating, you kind of lost touch with whether you know you're hungry or full. And what I tell people is it's really okay for a while, that if you start with more structured meals, meaning really trying to eat somewhat of a balanced meal every couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours, allowing yourself to have snacks. If your body knows that you're going to be getting meals at those consistent times, you'll probably start to recognize, your body will anticipate being hungry at those times. And that's kind of the best thing to do.
Yeah, especially if you're coming from a restricted background, which like most of us are, we've learned to really suppress our hunger signals, and to sort of not even suppress our fullness, but like to either push past it or ignore the fact that we're not full. Like we never honor our fullness.
Exactly.
It's always trying to sort of fight it in either direction. So part of the intuitive eating process is getting to know those hunger signals again and those fullness signals. And honestly, it's the process of trial and error, like it's a process of repetition. It's going to take time. And that is scary and can be upsetting, especially if it results in weight gain, which it might. But it's really important that you, like we were saying, every 2 to 3 hours, set that alarm, make sure you're not going too long without eating, because your body, even if you don't feel hunger, it needs the fuel. You can't go more than 4 hours without eating.
Can I make a point about that too, though? Because there's something so interesting. The composition of what you eat, the meals, you'll notice that it makes a difference. This is all why, well, this is all about exploration and seeing what works and what doesn't work. Like you may notice, for example, that, and I'm making this up, you have cereal and milk in the morning and like, oh my God, you feel starving an hour later. That's information that probably wasn't enough of a meal. You may feel better, again, just an example, as a trial and error, having a meal with some more protein, like eggs and toast, for example. And actually, I remember you told me that when you were first starting intuitive eating, you took all these pictures. Maybe you can talk about that, because I get a kick out of that.
Yeah, so I mean, I've used Instagram for so many different things at this point in my life, but yeah, like at first it was about my recovery, and then eventually it was about exploring intuitive eating, because I was just like, what do I eat? I've had all these rules, and now I don't have any, and I don't even know what I like. Like I was a binge eater, so I was. It was sort of like I would restrict and use only these really safe foods during the day. And then at night I would binge on all these like, unsafe foods. Right. So it was like, I had no concept of like what a happy plate looked like for me,
A
happy plate. Yeah. I used to say,
another really good quote. What does a happy plate look like?
Happy plate, yeah. And so I started, I started experimenting. I started like wandering around the grocery store and picking up stuff that I knew I liked, or I thought I liked, that I had to sort of try again, see if I did really like. And then once I found something that I was really happy with, that I was satisfied, both, like it kept me full for a little while. It tasted good. Like I just walked away feeling good. I would take a picture of it. And I would post on Instagram, because I like that format, but you can also just have like a camera roll, just have photos in your phone. You can go to this sort of folder or feed of meals that you're gonna like. Because I mean, it's a normal part of the eating process to maybe not be craving something one day, but like you need to eat. That happens.
Absolutely. Can I make a point though? Not everyone is so visual. Not everybody wants to take pictures of their food. And I'll just say that I usually tell people to try to even just write down meals that feel really satisfying. For example, scrambled eggs, toast, and an orange. Just so that you kind of have a food 911. A 911. This is what you can have that this is satisfying.
Yeah, because I know personally, like even I've always found writing down what is in my fridge on the outside of my fridge is so helpful, because like, we've got all these drawers, all these compartments, and I'm staring at my fridge and all I see is a head of broccoli. I just don't like, if it's not in your face, like you don't think about it. And so I started making lists of like what I have in the fridge. And before I would even venture to the fridge or the pantry, I would be like, well, what can I make with this? And then I'd go find it, and that took a lot of the stress off as well, because it sort of removed that panicked feeling that I used to get when I would be sitting there just looking at the fridge, like, that like there's nothing to eat feeling. And that's one of the worst feelings, especially when you're trying to transition out of a restrictive place. That very quickly can trigger you back into it. Because if you feel paralyzed, sometimes you'll just walk away and not eat. I'm guilty of that.
To go from disordered eating, it's frank eating disorder, disordered eating, whether it's restricting, dieting, binging. Sometimes the person really does need to work individually with a dietitian who's trained in intuitive eating and health at every size. Just for this reason, I see, honestly, I've seen in some of the groups, people just trying to dive right in, and it's just a little bit too soon, a little scary. And the whole notion of sort of planning and thinking about what you might want to enjoy, and this notion of planning, sort of knowing what food you may want to keep in your house as you go through this process, is going to be very helpful.
Yeah. And you can sort of go and work with a nutritionist, and one that has training in health of every size and intuitive eating and eating disorders.
Important.
Work with a nutritionist to help you recognize your hunger and fullness again, to help you get to that place where you can sort of take the reins moving forward. It's like I think Evelyn Tribole likens it to like a cast when you break your leg.
Absolutely. Yes. When I work with someone who is recovering from, real disordered eating, they will have a meal plan. When people have been in higher levels of care or other kinds of programs, there's a meal plan. And that is the safety net. And by the way, even when someone is working on intuitive eating and trying to explore things that they haven't allowed themselves to eat for a while. Sometimes people get sick or there's stressful situations. A meal plan can be something to sort of fall back on. And again, that's just the cast. And it's not meant to be forever. We're going to be running a live group to help people really work their ways through intuitive eating. And if you're coming from a little bit more of a restrictive place and are struggling, that will be coming up. So stay tuned for that live work.
Yeah, because like the Facebook group is really nice, but really having access to Erica in a more individualized setting can make a huge difference. And when it's something like this group support that we're running, it's really affordable. It's much more affordable than like, Erica's individual services would be, or any nutritionist who has, the type of experience Erica has would be. So definitely look into it if you're looking for extra support, but maybe don't have can't pay the out of pocket that someone with a lot of experience and expertise would have. Plus, you also get a lot of social support, which I personally think is pretty invaluable.
Yeah, no, groups are really fun. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned.